Good morning. Today we will be discussing NTA mock test 14 physics. I will try to discuss most of the questions. Within the time limit. Rest of them you can try on your own. So if you look at this first question, a dip needle which is free to move in vertical plane perpendicular to the magnetic meridian will remain. A dip needle will always remain in the direction of horizontal magnetic field. Okay. So option is A. Second question. Square coil ACDE with its plane vertical is released from rest in a horizontal magnetic field which extends over length 2L as shown in the figure. Acceleration of the coil is. Okay, so if you look at this, so this is the coil. Your magnetic field is in this region. They are given this length as 2L. This length is L. Okay. Length of this is L. So initially when it is falling, okay, suppose it is completely outside. When it is completely outside, flux is 0. Okay, when it is completely outside, flux is 0, and the flux is not at all changing initially. Okay, when it is completely outside. So if there is no change in flux, there is no EMF. Okay, EMF. If there is no EMF, there is no current. If there is no current, there is no magnetic field. So there is no force other than mg. So initially its acceleration will be g downwards. Okay. Initially its acceleration will be g downwards. Now it starts entering. Okay. So as this starts going into the magnetic field. So initially flux is increasing. As this keeps going down, flux is increasing in this direction. Okay, flux is increasing into the board. Okay, flux is increasing into the board. Okay, Lenz's law says it will try to oppose it. So it will try to decrease it. So to try to decrease it, it will produce its own field outwards. Flux is increasing inwards. So it will try to produce its own field outwards. For field to be outwards, the current has to be anti-clockwise. Current has to be anti-clockwise. Now there will not be any field. Sorry, there is no field here. So there is no force on the upper side. There is no, this current. Okay, this current is parallel, or this current is vertically downwards. This current is vertically upwards. So these two forces cancel. So there is no force on this. There is no force on. There is force on these two sides, but they cancel each other. So there will be only force on this one. If you look at the force, it will be I into L bar cross B bar. Upwards. Okay. So if you look at this square loop, there is a force upwards, magnetic force, and there is a mg. Okay. Okay. There is a magnetic force upwards and mg. So because of that, its acceleration will be less than g. Okay. So initially acceleration will be less than g. Now assume it completely okay. Okay. Now it is completely inside. Okay. When it is completely inside, flux in this is constant. Flux in this is constant. The flux is not changing. If flux is not changing, EMF is 0. If EMF is 0, current is 0. So force is 0, magnetic force. So there is only mg. Okay. So initially acceleration is less than g. Then acceleration becomes g. Now assume it is going out of this magnetic field. Okay. So as this is going outside, flux is decreasing in this. Okay, flux is decreasing inwards. Okay, flux is decreasing in this direction. Flux is in this direction, and it is decreasing. So to oppose that, okay, this coil will produce its own EMF in such a way that it will try to increase it. So it tries to produce field in this direction into the board. So current must be clockwise. Okay, current must be clockwise. Flux is increasing, flux is decreasing. As this coil leaves this, flux is decreasing. So to oppose it, it will try to increase in this direction. So current will be clockwise. So if magnetic field into the board, current is in this direction. So force will be I into L bar cross B bar, upwards. So magnetic force is again upwards. There is a mg. So magnetic force is upwards, mg is downwards. So acceleration will be again less than g. So if you look, initial acceleration is less than g. When it is completely inside, it becomes g. Okay, magnetic force is 0. So acceleration is g. Now when it is leaving, acceleration is again less than g. So you'll get option D. Less than g when it enters and comes out of the field, but equal to g when it is within the field. The magnetic flux linked with the coil is phi, EMF induced in it is E. Then EMF is minus d phi by dt. You need change in flux. Okay. So if flux is 0, then E must be 0. That we can't say. Flux can be non-zero initially, okay, and then it can change to 0. There is a change. It doesn't matter it changes to what value. If there is a change, EMF will be produced. So it must. There should not be this must. So this is wrong. If flux is not 0, then E cannot be 0. Again, you cannot say that. If flux is not 0, if flux is constant, then d phi is 0. So if flux is constant, then change in flux is 0, then EMF will be 0. Okay. So this is also wrong. If EMF is not 0, flux may or may not be 0. Now that is correct. Okay, flux may or may not be 0. Okay. None of the above. Okay. So answer is option C. You need change. Okay. So here flux is 0 doesn't mean EMF must be 0. Okay. Next, the impedance of this circuit. Okay. Impedance formula is root of R square plus XC square. XC is 1 by C omega. Omega is 0 here. It's a DC circuit, DC current. So omega is 0. If omega is 0, then impedance is infinity. Okay. A 100 volt AC source of frequency 500 Hz is connected to an LC circuit with L as this, C as this, R is this, all connected in series, shown in figure. Quality factor. Okay. So quality factor formula, it's a direct formula. It's XL by R, or XC by R. Okay. XL is L omega by R, or XC is 1 by C omega. Okay. They are given omega as 2 pi f. They are given frequency as 500 Hz. So omega will be 2 pi f. So if you substitute all those values, L 2 pi f by R. Okay. If you substitute the values, they are given all the values, we will get the answer. Okay. We will get the answer as 2.54. Okay. Quality factor is XL by R, or XC by R. Okay. The magnifying power of a telescope is 10, and length is this for normal adjustment. Okay. Normal adjustment. Okay. Okay. If you remember the formula, magnification in normal adjustment. Okay. Or we'll solve it. Okay, no problem. Okay. This is a telescope, so light is falling from infinity. Image will be formed at FO. Okay. Normal adjustment, final image should also be at infinity. So for final image to be at infinity, this length should be FE. Okay. So this is forming at infinity. So in this case, magnification formula comes out to be FO by FE. They given this as 10. Length is FO plus FE. They have given this as 1.1. Okay. So if you solve these two, okay, you will get FO as 1, FE as 0.1. So this is normal adjustment. Okay. Now next, the magnification when the image is formed at least distinct of vision. Okay. Okay. Least distinction of vision means, okay, light is coming still from the infinity. So the image is still formed at FO. Okay. This part doesn't change. Okay. But this one will change. This distance is some u. Okay. Okay. At what u will this final image, okay, this is the final image, be formed at D? Okay. Okay, in normal adjustment, this final image will be formed at infinity. Okay. In at least distance of vision, in this second case, it will be formed at capital D. Okay. So your magnification formula will change. So let's use the formula. We know image is at D, 1 by D minus D. Okay. It's a virtual image. Minus 1 by U, minus of minus is equal to 1 by FE. FE is 0.1. Okay. So from here you will get 1 by U is equal to 1 by 0.1 plus 1 by D is 25 centimeters or 0.25. So this comes around, so we have 1 by u is equal to 14. Okay. So this is 1 by u. Okay. This is the image formed at capital D. Now they are asking magnification. So magnification formula is, okay, we will be having formula as FO by u. Okay. In the first case, magnification was FO by FE. Okay. Okay. This is at normal vision. Okay, this is at normal vision. This is at least distinction of vision. Okay. So substitute all the values. FO is 1, U is 1 by 14. We'll be getting 14. Okay. So answer will be 14. Okay. You can just remember the formulas if you want. Okay. This is in, okay, normal adjustment. This formula is in least distance. Okay. Least distant. Okay. So remember the formulas for telescope, this one and this one. What happens to the fringe pattern if in the path of one of the slits a glass plate which absorbs 50% energy is introduced? Now, when you have two slits, this will be the central bright fringe initially. Initially both have intensity I and I. So I max will be 4I, I minimum will be 0. Okay. Now they are inserting a glass plate. Suppose if you put a glass plate here, okay, because of a glass plate, okay, central bright fringe shifts. Okay. Whenever you insert a glass plate, central bright fringe always shifts towards the glass plate. So now the central bright fringe has shifted, okay, and they are also saying this will decrease the intensity. So this is I by 2 now, and this is still I. Okay. So in that case, we'll be getting I max as root I1 plus root I2 whole square. Okay. It will be less than 4I, and I minimum as root I1 minus root I2 whole square. This one will be less than 4I, and this one will be more than 0. Okay. Okay. So what happens is, because of inserting this glass slug, fringe is shifted and brighter maxima, okay, or brighter fringe becomes little bit darker, and a darker fringe becomes little bit brighter. So the bright fringe becomes brighter, wrong. Bright fringe becomes darker. No fringes are absorbed, wrong. The fringe width decreases, wrong. So answer is none of the above. So your answer should be central fringe shifts towards the glass slab, and bright fringe becomes darker, and dark fringe becomes brighter. Okay. Next, a circular beam of, okay, so it's a refraction. So you have light falling like this. This is circular beam. So this is the diameter. Okay. This is the diameter. Okay. This is the initial angle of incidence, I. Okay. This is the angle of incidence, I. So because of this, light refracts. Even here, light refracts. Okay. So again, draw a perpendicular from here. This is the new diameter. Okay. Draw perpendicular initially. This is the initial diameter. Draw perpendicular finally. This is the final diameter. This is I. Okay. So this will be I. Okay. This distance, this angle is R. So this angle will be R. So if you look at this triangles, okay, this triangle and this triangle, this side can be written as D secant I. D secant I. This side can also be written as new diameter secant R. Okay, new diameter secant R. So if you want new diameter, it's, okay, D cos R by cos I. So this is the formula. If you want, you can remember it. Now they have given us angle of incidence and refractive index. So apply Snell's law. Okay, mu is 1, sine 60 is equal to mu sine r. So you'll get sine r as 1 by root 3. So we have sine r. We know initial angle of incidence. We know angle of refraction. So you can substitute in this. Okay, if you solve that, okay, you'll be getting answer as 3.26. Okay. So initial diameter, final diameter. Okay. These two are parallel lines. They remain parallel. Okay. So the perpendicular distance between them is diameter. Okay. Substitute in these values, you'll get the answer. Okay. The apparent depth of an object O from AB. Okay. So when you have glass slabs like this, okay, apparent depth formula can be directly written as T1 by mu1 plus T2 by mu2 and so on, where T is thickness. Okay. So substitute in this. Initially this is 5 centimeters by 1.5 plus this is 4 centimeters by 1.4. Okay. This is apparent depth formula in a combination of slabs. Okay, it doesn't matter how many you have. Okay. This is the formula, T1 by mu1 plus T2 by mu2 and so on. So if you solve this one, you'll be getting 6.19 centimeters. Okay. This is apparent depth in a combination of slabs. Okay. Next, the deviation produced by a prism. Okay. Deviation by a prism formula is mu minus 1 into A for a small prism. Okay. A is common for all, so it depends on mu. Okay, so deviation is directly proportional to mu, and refractive index is inversely proportional to wavelength. Refractive index is inversely proportional to wavelength. So the deviation is inversely proportional to wavelength. So deviation will be greatest for minimum wavelength. So deviation will be greatest for minimum wavelength and least for red. Okay. So answer will be C. Okay. So deviation is proportional to mu, and mu is proportional to 1 by lambda. Next, a transistor used as an amplifier in common base mode with a load resistance of 5 kilo ohm. If the current gain is this, input resistance is this, then voltage gain. Again we have formula. Okay, voltage gain is current amplification. Okay, voltage gain is current amplification or current gain into load resistance by input resistance. So if you solve this one, we have 0.98 current amplification, load resistance is 5 kilo ohms, and input resistance is 70. Okay. So if you solve this, you'll be getting 70 again. Okay. This is voltage gain. If you want power gain, it is current amplification into voltage gain. So alpha is 0.98 again into 70. 0.9 into 70 is around 68.6. Okay. Just directly remember the formulas. Okay. Voltage gain is current amplification into load by input. Okay. Power gain is current amplification into voltage gain. Next, a photoelectric experiment is performed at 2 different intensities. See, in photoelectric effect, we are looking at particle nature. So intensity will be proportional to number of photons, okay, not energy. Okay, intensity is nowhere related to energy of photon. Okay, intensity is nowhere related to energy of photon. Now choose the correct graph showing variation of stopping potential versus frequency of light. We know the formula stopping potential, V stopping potential is equal to H by E into frequency minus work function by E. Stopping potential depends only on frequency of the light. It is independent of the intensity. It doesn't matter what is the intensity. If you increase intensity, current will increase but not stopping potential. So your graph should be somewhat like this. Okay. So there is a threshold frequency. There is a threshold frequency. Now as frequency increases, stopping potential increases. Okay, it is no way related to intensity. So for different intensities also you still have the same graph. Either it is I1 or I2 or I3. It doesn't matter. It is independent of intensity. So wrong. It should be same. Wrong. So none of this. Okay. So the graph should be simply one single straight line. In radioactive series, okay, U238. This is 92, 238. It has become PB82, 206 by emptying alpha, N1 alpha. So alpha means this is 2, this is 4, this is N1 and N2 beta. Beta is 1, sorry, minus 1, 0. So first, okay, balance the atomic numbers and get charge. First balance the charge. 92 must be equal to 82 plus 2 into N1 minus N2. This is balancing of charges below. Next, balance the nucleons. 238 must be equal to 206 plus 4N1 plus 0. So if you solve this, you will get N1 is equal to 8, N2 is equal to 6. Okay, balance charges. 92 must be equal to 82 plus N1 into 2 plus N2 into minus 1. Balance nucleons. 238 is equal to 206 plus N1 into 4 plus N2 into 0. Next, in which of the following systems will radius, okay, we'll assume all follow Bohr's model. So radius is proportional to m square by z. First orbit, so n is equal to 1. So radius is proportional to 1 by z. So z is maximum for lithium. So r is minimum. A cyclist taking a turn bends inward while a car passenger taking the same turn is thrown outwards. Car is heavier than cycle. Car has 4 wheels. Cyclist has to counteract the centrifugal force. See, when you are on a cycle, you have to do it on your own. Okay. While in the case of the car will do it. Okay. The car will take the bend, or okay. While in the case of the cars, there will be banking, or sometimes car will take the bend. Okay. So only the passenger is thrown away by this force. So in the case of the car will take the bend and you will be thrown outwards. Okay. Next, a bird weighs 2 kg and is inside a closed case. If it starts flying with constant velocity, then what is the weight of the bird? A bird flies because okay, it is applying some force on the air, and air will apply some force on it, and there is its own weight, 20. They said it has no acceleration, so F must be equal to 20. This is force applied by the air on the bird. Same force air will also apply here. So if you draw a BD of this cage, okay, there is this F which is equal to 20, and then there is its own weight. So initially it was 3 kg, even now it will be 3 kg. Okay, because acceleration of this bird is 0. Okay. A uniform rope of length L lies on a table. If the coefficient of friction is mu, then the maximum length of the part of the rope which can overhang from the table without sliding. So it is not sliding, so it has no acceleration. So if you draw FBD, let us assume this length is L1, okay, or let us assume this is Y, then this will be L minus Y. If you draw FBD, there is its own mass. Let us assume mass per unit length is lambda YG. That's it. Okay. And here there will be a force, friction, which is mu into N. N is because of this. Okay. N is because of this one. So N is equal to mg, where mg is lambda into L minus y into g. This gravity has to be balanced by friction. Okay, there is a gravity here, but gravity will be balanced by normal. So this gravity of this hanging part must be balanced by the friction here. So you have mu lambda L minus y into g must be equal to lambda y g. Lambda into g cancel. So you have mu into L is equal to y into 1 plus mu. So you'll get y is equal to mu into L by 1 plus mu. Option C. Weight of this hanging part has to be balanced by friction. This weight of this resting part, this one is on the table, it will be balanced by N. A truck traveling due north turns west and travels at the same speed. So this is initial velocity 20, this is final velocity 20. They want change in velocity. So change in velocity is final minus initial. So this is final minus initial. So reverse this one. So resultant of these two will be in this direction. This is delta V. So delta V is southwest. Okay, delta V is southwest. Now we need magnitude. This is 20. This is 20. Angle between them is 90. So magnitude will be 20 root 2. So 20 root 2 southwest. Okay. Delta V is final velocity minus initial velocity. So this is final velocity. For initial velocity, reverse this one. Okay, minus VA. A stationary object at 4 degrees centigrade and weighing 3.5 kg falls from a height 2000 on a snow mountain at 0 degrees. The temperature of the object just before hitting the snow is 0 degrees and the object comes to rest immediately, then the object will melt. How much ice? Okay. So initially it is at a height 2000. Here its velocity is 0. Here suppose let us assume its velocity is some v. Okay. They are saying it collides with the ice. Okay. Here it has kinetic energy. So it collides with the ice and finally comes to rest again. So the energy lost by this. Okay. Energy lost. Energy lost is equal to change in kinetic energy. So this will lose kinetic energy. Its initial velocity was v. Suddenly after collision it becomes 0. So it will lose energy. That energy will be converted into heat. Now this heat will be absorbed by ice and because of that ice melts. Okay. So let's find out heat. How much is the heat? Heat is half. Mass is 3.5 kg. Okay, mass is 3.5 kg. Mass is 3.5 kg. V is root of 2gh. So it will be 2g. H is 2000. This is energy. This energy will be converted into heat and using that heat ice will melt. So mass of ice into L. So you'll get mass of ice as 7 into 10 power 4 by L. They are given L as 3.5 into 10 power 5. Okay. So you'll be getting 2 into 10 power minus 1 kg or around 200 grams. 200 grams of ice. Okay. Heat lost by this will be converted into heat. Sorry, kinetic energy lost by this will be converted into heat. That heat will melt ice. At NTP, water boils at 100 degrees centigrade deep down a mine. Now when we go inside a mine, okay, pressure will increase. As you go in below, atmosphere, if you assume the atmosphere, as we go downwards, okay, pressure increases. Okay. Now when the atmospheric pressure increases, boiling point, boiling point also increases. Okay. So water will boil at 100 degrees centigrade. Okay. When atmospheric pressure increases, boiling point increases. While measuring the thermal conductivity of a liquid, we keep the upper part hot and lower part cool. So Now, for a liquid, hot liquid will have lesser density and cold liquid will have higher density. Convection may be stopped, radiation may be stopped. Now, we can't stop radiation by this. If you want to stop radiation, you have to use vacuum, or you have to use insulators. So radiation may be stopped. This is not the condition for stopping radiation. Heat conduction is easier downwards. It is easier and more convenient to do so. Out of all these options, convection may be stopped. Now we get convection. Convection is because of gravity. Convection is because of gravity. So if cold liquid is upwards, if cold liquid is upwards, if above, or if suppose if this was the case, if the cold liquid was above and hot liquid is below, so you have low density, you have high density at the top, low density at the bottom. So because of gravity, this cold liquid goes downwards, hot liquid goes upwards. Because of gravity, heavier body comes down and lighter body goes up. So this is convection. So if you want to avoid convection, take this case where hot liquid is above and cold liquid is below. That is, lower liquid is floating on the higher liquid. So in this case, there is no chance of convection. To stop radiation, you have to use insulators. You have to use insulators. So answer is option A. Appropriate answer is option A. We have done this already. A tuning fork of frequency 100 Hz when sounded together with another frequency produces 2 beats. So you have 100 Hz. It is sounded with another tuning fork whose frequency is unknown. Then the beats are 2. So the other one can be 102 or it can be 98. The unknown frequency can be either 98 or 102. Now, unloading this unknown frequency, you are loading it. When you load this tuning fork, you are increasing its mass or you are increasing its inertia, so its frequency will decrease. So suppose if it was 102, this will decrease. If it was 98, decreases. So if you load this unknown tuning fork, frequency decreases. So 102 becomes 101, 98 becomes 97. Suppose if you take this case, it is 101. If you take this case, it is 97. Now if you sound these two together, beat frequency is 1. If you sound these two together, beat frequency is 3. So let's see what's happening. Unloading the tuning fork, whose frequency is not known, and sounded again with the 100 Hz, it produces 1 beat. So it must be this case. If you assume this unknown frequency is this, then unloading it becomes 97 and beat frequency becomes 3. So it must be this case. So the unknown frequency is 102. Next, the equation of a transverse wave is this. Their frequency is omega by 2 pi. Omega is coefficient of time. There is a pi here, so coefficient of time is 2 pi. A particle is executing SHM along y-axis, has its motion described by this equation. The amplitude of the motion is. So it is moving along y-axis. This is y is equal to 0, not mean position. This is y coordinate. So if you want to find mean position, differentiate this, you will get velocity. Differentiate this again, you will get acceleration. So acceleration is minus a omega square sine omega t. This is acceleration. Now if you want to find mean position, mean position by definition means acceleration must be 0. That means sine omega t is 0. If sine omega t is 0, y will be, y is equal to a, sine omega t is 0, y will be b. So y is equal to b. This is the mean position. In SHM, always find the mean position. Mean position means acceleration is 0. Acceleration is 0 is sine omega t is 0. If sine omega t is 0, then y is equal to b. So this is the mean position. Now amplitude is measured from the mean position, not from the origin. Now what is the maximum value of y? Sine omega t maximum value is plus 1. So maximum value of y is a plus b. Minimum value is, synovial minimum value is -1. So b minus a. So the particle will be oscillating like this. The particle will be oscillating about y is equal to b, and it will move towards this extreme and this extreme. So you can say this length is a, this length is also a. So amplitude is a. Okay. Amplitude is measured from the mean position. A perfect gas contained in a cylinder is kept in vacuum. The cylinder suddenly bursts. Okay. So it bursts suddenly. So when that happens, there is no time for heat exchange. Okay. There is no time for heat exchange. So delta Q is 0. Whenever something happens suddenly, there is no time for heat exchange. So it's an adiabatic process. Next, it is kept in a vacuum. If it is kept in a vacuum, then gas won't be doing any work. So first law of thermodynamics, delta Q 0, delta W 0, so delta U also 0. So temperature is constant. Okay. The density of a gas at NTP is this, keeping the pressure constant, density at 127 degrees. Use ideal gas equation, PV is equal to nRT, or you can also write this as P is equal to rho by molecular mass. They kept pressure constant, molecular mass is constant, R is constant, so you have rho proportional to 1 by T. Okay. So at 27 degrees it is 24. At 127 degrees, how much? Okay, 27 degrees converted into Kelvin, so 300, 400. So you get rho is equal to 18. A vertical column of a certain liquid 50 centimeters long at 50 degrees centigrade balances another column of the same liquid 60 centimeters long at 100 degrees centigrade. So you can take it like a U-tube. This is 50 centimeters, this is 60 centimeters. Okay. This is 50 centimeters long, this is 60 centimeters long. This is at 50 degrees centigrade, this is at 100 degrees centigrade. So pressure at this point is, this is P naught, okay. P naught plus rho at 50 degrees centigrade, rho at 50 degrees centigrade, or you can write it as rho at 0 degrees by 1 plus gamma delta T. Delta T is 50. Rho G H is 50 centimeters. Okay, that is the pressure here. Similarly, if the pressure here is P naught, then pressure at this point is rho, density at this point is rho 1 plus gamma delta T. Delta T is 100. G into H is 60. So if we solve this, we have 5 plus 500 gamma is equal to 6 plus 300 gamma. So you have 1 is equal to 200 gamma, or gamma is equal to 1 by 200. It's approximately 0.05. Okay, it's like you have a U-tube. Okay, two liquids but different temperatures. So different temperature means different densities. Okay. The height of a mercury barometer is 75 centimeters at sea level. So at sea level, so this is the tube. Here the pressure is 0. Okay. So here it is P naught. Okay. So when you go height H, so you have P naught, okay, P naught minus rho G H is equal to, pressure at this point is 0, or you have P naught is equal to rho G H. They given the height of mercury column is 75 centimeters, so H is 75 at sea level, and 50 centimeters at the top of a hill. Now at the top of a hill, now at the top of a hill, pressure won't be P naught. Outside pressure will be P naught minus density of air. into height of the hill. Okay, this is the outside pressure. So if this is the outside pressure, again there is a vacuum at this point, 0. So again using this logic, P naught minus rho A G, height of the hill, height of the hill must be equal to density of mercury G into, now they said 50 centimeters. This was 75 centimeters. Here outside pressure is P naught. Here outside pressure is P naught minus rho A G H. Okay, this is air, so you are going above, so pressure decrease. Now if we solve these two, P naught is this, substitute in this. So we have rho G, okay, 75 minus 50 is 25, is equal to rho of air into G into height of the hill. So you get height of the hill as, the given ratio of density of mercury to air is 10 power 4. So rho by rho A is 10 power 4, okay, into 25. This is in centimeters. Sorry, this is in centimeters. 25 is in centimeters. So it's 10 power minus 2. So you'll be having 2.5 kilometers. Okay. So 2.5 kilometers. Okay. Initially it was sea level, so pressure is P naught. Now it is at height capital H, so pressure is P naught minus rho A G H. Okay. A ball is dropped from a height H on the ground. The coefficient of restitution is E, the height to which ball goes after n rebounds. Okay. First rebound, here velocity will be root of 2gh. Okay. Now when it bounds with, when it hits with U, it goes back with EU. So after first collision, velocity is EU. It goes up, comes down, again it hits with EU. After second collision, velocity becomes E time EU, so E square U. So after first collision it's EU, second collision E power 2U, third collision E power 3U. Similarly after nth collision, its velocity will be E power n into U. If this is the velocity, then maximum height will be U square by 2g. U square by 2g. So you'll get it as E power 2n. U square by 2g is h. So h into E power 2u. Okay. Next, a body moves along an uneven horizontal road with a constant speed at all points, the normal reaction. At any instant, if you draw, suppose if you draw FBD at A, okay, at A, you have mg downwards, you have n upwards, the curve is upwards, or center is somewhere here. Okay, so centripetal acceleration will be v square by radius of curvature. Okay, so here your equation will be n minus mg is equal to mass into acceleration. So you'll get n equal to mg plus mv square by r. This is at A or C. Okay, at A or C. Okay. Now at B. Okay. At B, car is here on the top. FBD is, this is mg. N will be upwards. Center is somewhere here. Curve is this way, so center is somewhere here. So centripetal acceleration will be towards the center. So your equation is mg minus n is equal to mv square by r. Or you have n is equal to mg minus mv square by r. So if you look at B will be the least. So NB is the least because it is mg minus something. Now between A and C, it's mg plus mv square by r. V is same everywhere. It depends on radius of curvature. Now if you look at this diagram, A is more curved. Okay, A is more curved than C. Okay, C is little bit flatter compared to A. So radius of A will be less. Okay, this is the circle of A. Okay, this one is the circle of C. Okay. C is more flatter than A. So radius of A is less. If radius of A is less, NA will be more. So NA is the maximum, NC is in between. So maximum at A. Two loops are made of uniform wire. The radii of P and Q, R1 and R2 respectively, and their moment of inertia are I1 and I2. R1, R2. So they are wires. So if you assume mass density as lambda, then mass of this one is lambda into 2 pi r1, mass of this is lambda into 2 pi r2. This is mass. Moment of inertia is mr square. Okay. Moment of inertia is mr square. They have said I2 is 4I1. So I2, 2 pi lambda, I2, 2 pi lambda, R2 cube is 4 times I1, 2 pi lambda, R1 cube. They want R2 by R1. So R2 by R1 comes out to be 4 to the power of 1 by 3. Okay. A ball of mass m approaches a wall of mass capital M with the speed of this along the normal to the wall. The speed of the wall is 1 meter per second towards the ball. The speed of the ball after an elastic collision. See, you have a wall. This is very heavy. So its collision, in a collision, its velocity will not change. So initially it was 1. This ball is moving towards it with 4. After the collision also, this one will still move with 1. This one, let us assume it is moving with v. In a collision, this is so heavy that its velocity doesn't change. So apply E. E is equal to V minus 1 by 1 minus of minus 4. So you'll get V is equal to 6. You got positive answer. That means this direction is correct. So 6 meters away from the wall. Okay. A mass of 1 kg is acted upon by a single force. Due to force, mass is displaced from here to here. If initially speed is 2, final speed is. Force is constant. So you can write work done as F bar dot S bar. F bar is 4 into I plus J dot S is final position minus initial position. So I cap plus J cap. It's 4 into dot I1 plus 1. So you'll get it as 8 joules. So work done is 8 joules. So work energy theorem, work done is equal to change in kinetic energy, half m final velocity square minus initial velocity square. So you'll get v square is equal to 8 to 16 root 20. Okay. Root 20 is approximately 4.5. Force is constant. So force is constant. So work is F bar dot S bar. Now, 2 cylindrical vessels containing liquid of density rho. There are 2 holes on the sides, H1 and H2, where their range of efflux be same. This is H1. This is H2. So here velocity of efflux is root of 2g. Suppose total height is h minus h1. So initial velocity is this. Now range will be ux into time. Time is root of 2 h1. Okay, it is falling down like this. So height is h. Sorry. Let us call this as h2. This is h1. Okay. Root of 2 h1 by g. Similarly, for the second hole, okay, ux will be 2g. Height above it is h minus h2 into time is 2 h2 by g. They said these two are equal. So if you equate these two, so you get h1 into h minus h1 is equal to h2 into h minus h2. Okay. Or if you solve, you will get h is equal to h1 plus h2. Okay. Now the question is the height of a hole for which range of efflux would be maximum. Now range of efflux will be maximum for the midpoint. So it should be H1 plus H2 by 2. H1 plus H2 by 2. Okay. An anisotropic has a coefficient of linear expansion alpha, 2 alpha, 3 alpha, coefficient of cubical expansion. So assume we have a cube L, and L along x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. Let us assume this is alpha, this is 2 alpha, this is 3 alpha. Okay. Length is L and L. Okay. Length is L, breadth is L, height is also L. Now when you heat this one, final volume is final length, which is L into 1 plus alpha delta T, into final breadth, which is L into, okay, you can take this as breadth, okay, 1 plus 3 alpha delta T, plus height L into 1 plus 2 alpha delta T. Okay, this is final volume. We can also write final volume as initial volume L cube into 1 plus gamma equivalent. That's what you have to find. L cube into 1 plus alpha delta T, 1 plus 2 alpha delta T, 1 plus 3 alpha delta T. Okay. L cube cancel. Now if you multiply this, okay, if you multiply this and cancel, okay, every, okay, higher power of alpha, okay, keep only alpha, cancel alpha square, alpha cube, all these things, because alpha is very small, so anything to the power of alpha other than 1 can be neglected as it's 0. Okay, so you can assume alpha square 0, alpha cube 0, so just keep only alpha terms. Okay, so you'll be getting 1 plus 6 alpha delta T. Neglect alpha square terms, neglect alpha cube terms. Okay, you'll be left with this. So comparing this, you'll get gamma equivalent as 6 alpha. In all these problems, always neglect alpha powers, higher powers of alpha. Next, which one of the following would cause maximum rising temperature of 20 grams of water? So you have 20 grams of water, Ms. Suppose its temperature has increased to T. This is heat gained by this one. So this must be equal to heat lost. Okay, mass of this is, okay, final initial temperature minus this. In each case they are given mass and they are given initial temperature. Mass is 20 grams, initial temperature is 40. Mass is 40, initial temperature is 35. Mass is 10, initial temperature is 50. Mass is 4, initial temperature is 80. So on solving this, okay, you can find out T. Substitute each every time. You have to check with the options. You'll get answer as option D. Okay. Mass, initial temperatures of the second liquid, of hotter liquid. Okay. So you'll get option D as the answer. Okay. Energy is being emitted from the surface of a black body at the rate of this. They're given rate of emission. Okay. From Stephens-Boltzmann's law, we can write rate of energy emitted is proportional to T power 4. So first is 10 power 6 by the temperature of the black body at which rate emission is 16 into 10 power 6 will be initial temperature is 127 degrees centigrade, converted into Kelvin, 400 Kelvin by T power 4. So you can write this as 2 power 4, so power 4 cancel. So you get T is equal to 800 Kelvin. 800 Kelvin or 527 degrees centigrade. Stephens-Boltzmann's law, dq by dt is equal to A sigma T power 4. Same black body, so area is same. They given Wien's constant, value of lambda m. So we have Wien's displacement law, lambda m into T is constant. This is Wien's displacement law, lambda m into T is equal to constant. They given this as 14.46 microns into T this is 2892 into 10 power minus 6. So you'll get T is equal to 2892 by 14.46. So you'll get approximately 200, I guess. Okay. Direct formula, Wein's displacement law, lambda m into T is constant. They are given constant, they are given lambda m also. Now, two particles are projected from a point at the same time instant with velocities whose horizontal components and vertical components are this and this. The time interval between that passing through the other common point other than ours. So they are projected from the same point, somewhere like this. So they are asking the time gap between the two particles for reaching this point. So if you look at this diagram, let's take this is first particle, this is second particle. Okay. When the first particle is here, let us assume x is equal to u1 into t and y is equal to v1 into t minus half g t square. Okay. Now for the second particle, this particle is at this point, same point. So displacement in x direction will be same. X is equal to u2, but time is different. They want time gap, so t plus some delta t, and y is equal to v2 t plus delta t minus g by 2 into t plus delta t whole square. So we can equate x and we can equate y. So you have u1 into t is equal to u2 into t plus delta t. Similarly here v1 t minus g by 2 t square is equal to v2 into t plus delta t minus g by 2 into t plus delta t whole square. So if you look at this, we have two unknowns, t and delta t. We know u1, u2, v1, v2. We know g. So we have two unknowns, t and delta t. So if you can solve this, okay, if you solve this one, okay, we'll be getting, okay, and we have two equations. This is equation 1, this is equation 2. We have two unknowns, two equations, t and delta t, two unknowns, two equations. We'll be getting our answer. Okay, delta t, we need delta t. Okay. It's a little bit lengthy process, but you can try. Okay. The capacity of an isolated capacitor is increased and so you have isolated capacitor. Capacitance of a sphere is formula is this 4 pi epsilon naught 1 by r minus 1 by capital R. Now they have said isolated capacitor. Isolated capacitor means one sphere is here and the other sphere is at infinity. Okay. Isolated capacitor means this sphere forms capacitor. This sphere forms a capacitor with the one assumed to be at infinity. Okay. So capacitance of this one isolated capacitor is 4 pi epsilon naught 1 by r minus 1 by infinity is 0. Now next they are saying it is increased n times when it is enclosed by an earth concentric sphere. Now in the second case, okay, this is r, this is capital R. So capacitance will be 4 pi epsilon naught 1 by r minus 1 by capital R. They are saying because of placing this one, its capacitance has increased by n times. So this capacitance 4 pi epsilon naught 1 by r minus 1 by capital R is n times 4 pi epsilon naught 1 by r. 4 pi epsilon naught, 4 pi epsilon cancel. So if you solve this one, we'll be getting capital R by small r as n by n minus 1. Okay. We'll be getting n by n minus 1. Okay. Capacitance has increased by n times. That's what they're saying. Initially, this is the initial capacitance. This is the final capacitance. So final capacitance is n times initial capacitance. So if you solve this, you'll get capital R by small r as n by n minus 1. This is capacitance of a spherical capacitor formula. 4 pi epsilon naught 1 by inner radius minus 1 by outer radius. The capacitor of capacity 1 and capacitor of capacity 2 are separately charged fully by a common battery. Okay, this will have a charge of 1 V, Q is equal to CV. The other one will have a charge of CV. Okay. By a common battery. Now the capacitors are separately allowed to discharge through equal resistors. Now at t is equal to 0, they want current. Okay. If you look at this, potential difference across this at t is equal to 0 is V. Potential difference across this at t is equal to 0 is also V. Okay. They are charged by the same battery. So V initially. So current in this will be potential difference V by R. Current in this will also be potential difference is still V by R. So t is equal to 0, current is same. Wrong. Current is same. Next. 1 microfarad loses 50% of charge. Now if you find time constant is RC. Here time constant is R into 2C. Time constant is RC. Okay. So you can write time constant in first circuit is less than time constant in second circuit. That means this circuit takes less time to discharge. So first circuit will take less time. So first capacitor loses 50% sooner. Yes, less time, so sooner. Time constant in first circuit is less than time constant in second circuit. A charged soap bubble having surface charge density sigma and radius r. The pressure inside and outside are same. Then the surface tension of the soap solution is. So if you draw the FBD, it's a bubble. So it will have two surfaces like this. Okay. It's a bubble, so it will have two surfaces like this. So if you take half bubble, if you draw FBD, they are saying inside pressure Pi is same as outside pressure. So these two forces will get cancelled. Forces due to pressures will get cancelled. Next there will be force due to surface tension. On this outer surface, the force due to surface tension is T into 2 pi r. On the inner surface, force due to surface tension is again T into 2 pi r. This is the force due to surface tension. Okay. So someone must be balancing this. The pressures are getting cancelled. There is a surface tension force, so someone must be balancing this. Who is that someone? They have said a charged sphere. So if there is a charged sphere, so the other half will be reflecting this. The other half will be repulsing this one. Okay. So you have other half which is pushing this away, and that is balanced by surface tension. Now how do you find this force due to other half? So you have one half and the other half. So if you remember electrostatic pressure, okay, electrostatic pressure is sigma square by epsilon naught or 2 epsilon naught. This is electrostatic pressure. Okay, this is electrostatic pressure. Okay. If this is the pressure, then small force will be pressure into area, small area. So this is the small force. This is the small repulsive force in this direction. Now if you divide this into components, okay. Similarly at this point, okay, this force will have horizontal and vertical component. Okay. So if you get vertical components get cancelled, so there is only force in x direction. Okay. This force in x direction will balance this surface tension force. So this is the dF, but you don't want dF, you want dF in x direction. So this is a constant. You have to take area in x direction. Okay, or you call it as a projection area. Okay, so you'll get force in x direction as sigma square by 2 epsilon naught. Projection area of a sphere is circle, so it will be pi r square. So these two must be equal. This is the force due to surface tension, this is the force due to electric field. So equate these two. Okay, sigma square by 2 epsilon naught into pi r square is equal to 4 pi r into t. Okay. Same radius. Okay. So you'll be getting t is equal to sigma square by 8 epsilon naught, sigma square r by 8 epsilon naught. This is force due to surface tension, this is electrostatic repulsion. Okay. Light of wavelength, this falls normally in a narrow slit, is screen placed at a distance of 1 meter from the slit perpendicular to the direction of the light. First minima of diffraction pattern is situated. So you have a slit. Okay. This angle is theta. So for first minima, if this is capital D, this is y. If width of the slit is a, for first minima we have a sin theta is equal to lambda. In a diffraction, first minima a sin theta is equal to lambda. Theta is small, so sin theta is approximated as tan theta. Tan theta can be written as y by capital D. So you have width of the slit as d lambda by y. They given everything. Capital D is 1. Wavelength is 5000 angstroms or 5 into 10 power minus 7. Y is 5 mm, 5 into 10 power minus 3. So you'll be getting 10 power minus 4 or 0.1 mm. So this is the width. Okay. First minima a sin theta is equal to 1 lambda. How many minimum numbers of coplanar vectors having different magnitudes can be added to give zero resultant? Now, if you want zero resultant, they should form a polygon. That's polygon law. So if you want the resultant to be zero, okay, resultant 0, then from polygon law all the vectors should form the polygon. Okay. Now they have said clearly they have different magnitudes. Suppose if you take 2, the only chance is they should be opposite, but they have said they have different magnitudes, so they will never be 0. Suppose if you take 3, okay, can 3 vectors of different magnitudes form a polygon? Yes, we call it as scalene triangle. Okay. So 3 vectors different magnitudes can form a triangle. Okay. So their resultant can be 0. So answer is 3. Okay. With 2 you can never form having different magnitudes, but with 3 you can form a triangle, a scalene triangle, so its resultant will be 0. So answer is 3. So that's it. So if you have any doubts, you can contact me. Okay, my number is 7989891512. Okay, thanks.